Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the special meeting of the Glendale City Council. Call to order at 1:03 p.m. May we have roll call?
Yes, council members Brotman,
Here.
Garpetian,
Here.
Kazakian,
Here.
Najarian,
Here.
Mayor Asatrian.
Here. And may we have your report?
The agenda for the Tuesday, August 13, 2024 special public meeting of the City Council was posted on August 8, 2024 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
What's next?
Next is agenda item 1, Libraries, Arts, and Culture regarding citywide public art Montrose circular benches. A motion authorizing the city manager or designee to enter into an agreement for commission of artwork with Cassia Rico in an amount not to exceed $300,000 dispersed from the Urban Art Fund to design, fabricate, and install a public art piece entitled Our Garden Spot for the Montrose circular benches.
Great. Mr. Glenian.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor Asatrian, member City Council. I'm going to invite Jennifer Fokutomi Jones, our Principal Arts and Culture Administrator, to present the item for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Galanian. Good afternoon, Mayor Asatrian, members of City Council, city staff. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share about the proposed design for the Montrose circular benches. We're very excited about it. Just as background context, in November of 2023, the Arts and Culture Commission and LaBasse Projects, which is our public art consultant, released a request for qualifications, which included the Montrose circular bench opportunity for public art. In January of 2024, the application closed and staff received 230 applications for consideration. 230, yes. In February of 2024, an artist review and selection committee met to review all the applications for consideration, and the committee chose 4 artists from that pool to submit a proposal for a request for proposals for this specific public art opportunity. On June 20th of 2024, during the regular Arts and Culture Commission meeting, the 4 artists were invited to present their proposed designs for the Montrose circular benches. And during that meeting, the Arts and Culture Commission gave a unanimous decision for Acacia Rico's Our Garden Spot as the final recommendation. Simultaneously, we've been working with the Montrose Shopping Park Association for about over a year. We've been talking with them about different public art opportunities, specifically in Montrose and on the Honolulu Avenue area. In April of 2023, the Montrose Shopping Park Association Board decided to move forward with the circular benches as the primary opportunity for public art in that area. On June 6, 2024, LaBasse Projects and staff attended the Montrose Shopping Park Board Association's meeting to present the 4 designs. The board gave their feedback, and their decision is in alignment with the Arts and Culture Commission's decision as well. We do have Keisha Rico here, who's going to present her design for council's decision, and we also have LaBasse Projects, our public art consultant, who's here as well to answer any questions you may have. So I'm going to pass it over to Keisha.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Kat, Bo. Let me get settled. Thank you, Ellen Asatrian. It's great to meet you, City Council members. My name is Keisha Rico. I'm an artist. I work with painting, primarily oil painting and gouache. And the essence of my work primarily is to tell good stories with confident colors. And is this the switch? Perfect. To me, what brings together a community are good stories and local connection. Within these 3 sites, we aim to have a fusion of architecture, of art, and history. So here we are with Our Garden Spot. The project aims our connection to natural beauty between the 2 mountains in Glendale, as well as a vantage spot of this historical site at the end of the street where the benches are located. This vantage spot commemorates where the Glendale and Montrose railway system used to be, so it is a very historical site, and it's significant in the history of Montrose. My inspiration for the benches, it came from uncovering cultural stories from writers such as Robert Newcomb, Mike Lawler, and from researching the history of the land use from the Tongva tribe to the present. Go to the next slide. Some references such as the ticket, you will see there is an analog clock. And if we go back, that clock is located on the east side of each bench. So conceptually, it's bringing your focus to this vantage point where the historical site is on the east side of each bench location. I'm also referencing our garden spot, which is a name that the general manager of the railway once called Montrose. He said to encourage people to come move in here when it was just orchards and vineyards, he said that he wanted Montrose to become the spot, the garden spot of America. So pulling from his words, pulling from the aspiration, I'm using an accessible title called Our Garden Spot. Okay, so by linking historical narratives and architectural ephemera, such as this ticket and these photos, which are direct inspirations for the artwork, with Glendale's natural beauty, my design aims to act as a tapestry of Glendale's history, bringing it to the lives of people. So we'll come to the bench concepts themselves. I want to be mindful, and I know that there's been briefing already with each design, so I'm not going to go over too much of the granular information, but I'm happy to go over any specific details if you have questions. The floor here features mosaic design, and I specifically decided on the floor being the larger hero spot to maximize the surface area of the site. There will be no major alterations of this site. It really is just about enhancing it with materials and highlighting culture, which goes beyond the limits of the physical site. So the artwork can be distinguished here as a series for their dynamic use of perspective, dramatic depth, symbolic forms, and a use of a limited color palette. This particular site's inspiration next to Mumia is inspired by the pollinators. So we're thinking back to before the railroad was installed, it used to be, the land use of the area was orchards, it was vineyards. So I'm paying homage to these pollinators of the land and thinking through symbolically what that represents, especially paired next to a forget-me-not flower. We're thinking about symbolism. We're thinking about complementing history and complementing the local surroundings and the community. For site specificity, I'm also mindful that this is one of 3 spots, but this is the site that has the least amount of shade. So I'm intentional with light colors to resist heat. I'm also intentional with having a lot of contrast in this image so that it attracts interaction throughout the day. We'll go on to the next. So the next inspiration are, it's a homage to the Montrose peacock. The history behind this is that after the railroad was installed, 2 blocks away, give or take, from the Honolulu Avenue, there was a very prominent family, and this family is a husband and wife, and they decided to gift each other 3 peacocks, and 2 of them had offsprings, and then therefore it introduces why the Montrose peacock is here today, is really part of that story. So this design here with the 2 peacocks, it references connection, it references a sense of belonging. Also, if you look at the bottom of the design, there's a water source, which is also very symbolic. And this water source reflects the sky. It reflects these clouds. So we're thinking about evoking this cyclical sense of time. And I'm also thinking about nature and humanity with this work. This specific site is under a very densely shaded tree, and it casts a lot of shade. So I'm very particular in this design to be high contrast with really striking values from lights to darks, and so that it pops out underneath this shaded tree area. I'm also mindful of the surrounding buildings. This one particular street has very bright yellow buildings, so I'm thinking of something to soften that and add some harmony as this specific bench is flanked by these buildings. But primarily because it's next to this tree, because it feels like this is where people are gathering and sharing stories underneath this tree, I'm just very cognizant of the natural setting of this particular site. And we are coming to the third design, which I call the hero design. It's very emblematic of this area. It has the flowers that are like the city's flowers. And I think we've like covered this, so because I know there were a couple questions in some former meetings, I want to take some time to address those now in terms of the care for these mosaics, what grading and the heat looks like, as well as there was a mention the last meeting about signage. So I did some investigation on that, and I found a partnership to get some signage to be built next to the bench. So this could look like a standing sign that is used in national parks. I'm also familiar, there is a fourth bench that was mentioned, and I went for a site visit, and I found out through some research that the Glendale Historical Society commissioned the signage for that. So instead of that type of signage, I could also contact them and find their vendor and find a similar signage so that it's unified in the neighborhood too. So that's an option. In terms of care, these glass mosaics and the plaster wall that will be covering the bricks and painted with some color, they will be waterproofed. So care is as simple as water with some pressure to clean it. And then sometimes in the past I've added it's called a UV paint coat on top of paint, and that helps just do easy cleaning in case there was extra dirt, someone like adds anything to it, something gets spilled on it. It will help keep maintenance really easy. In terms of grading, the glass tiles and the metallic components are 1/4 inch tall, so they really don't add too much change to the elevation of the site. The site will be, as you can see, there is a border trim that's metallic, and that will help preserve the longevity of the edge of the mosaic that otherwise would have been exposed. And for heat, there is, for the metallic elements, because the thickness of it, it really won't, it's not enough material to generate a heat safety concern. So what I would recommend is we just treat it and finish it, and that will give it like a stainless steel effect, and that will just help the touch quality of keeping it smooth and then reducing heat as well. Yeah, so for this specific spot, I'm thinking through the paint colors that are already around this area. The floor around the walkways, the crosswalks, are this plum color. So these designs really are looking at the area and finding ways and elements to incorporate it further. So this purple color is also used within the design, and it's also used on the exterior wall to kind of bring some harmony and integration. And lastly, I'll land on this slide here, which shows all three of the designs. So the objectives here overall were in terms of engagement, longevity, connection. With that, I bring you this immersive experience with multiple components, multiple histories, this analog clock for this conceptual element, symbolic characters, an exterior mural, and all of these components come together unified and simply are meant to enhance the beauty of the site and the history and evoke nature and beauty and humanity. So thank you so much, and I'll open the floor to questions or comments.
I'll just say that I absolutely love all of this, and I know I read in the report that our Montrose Shopping Park Association had also reviewed and loved it. I was going to address the signage. I also think you're a great storyteller.
Oh, thank you.
And perhaps with the signage, there can be some like QR code where she's actually telling, it leads to an audio version of what would be the history. And maybe it can be even your voice telling the story and how you came up with it, but I absolutely love it. Councilmember Kasakian.
Thank you. Actually, that was one of my suggestions as well. I think the QR code that'll tell the specific story of each little area or the theme of that area. A lot of other cities have similar markers around the city that you can click on, and either audio or maybe even a link to the shopping park site with a landing page of the history. Given how you connected the history of the area to your designs, I think especially. I have one question regarding the top design with the butterfly. Is that just a generic representation? I'm sorry, the previous one, yes. Is that just a generic, or is that a local species of butterfly?
For the butterfly,
Yeah.
I
and the pollinators.
believe that, where did my butterfly come from? I went through, there's this old like magazine or zine or some type of like paper ephemera in the archives from Brand Library, and there were some yellow flowers.
Okay.
It was from Glendale, and it had a photo at the very end to soften the content. It was like some government content, and there was a flower with butterfly on it, and so it's loosely pulled from that. I could look into what specific type of butterfly that
That's
was.
my suggestion,
Yeah.
because I'm always in favor of softening government content in any way we can. But given how rich in natural diversity that part of Glendale is,
Yeah.
we're very blessed to live in a place where we have open spaces and we have all sorts of animals, including species of butterfly. If there was one that was more closely related to what we have here in the foothill areas, I think that would resonate more with residents. And because I love the peacock. The peacock is very emblematic, literally quite, of Glendale. It's in our city seal. It's the official bird of Glendale for some reason. I think that is very important to have, as well as the hibiscus and the local flowers, which is, the hibiscus is also the official flower of Glendale, along with the jacaranda, that's the official tree. So I think all of those incorporated is great. Now, in terms of keeping the mosaic and the floor design, the ground design clean, what is the technical aspects of being able to? I know you mentioned there's glaze involved.
Yeah.
How often would it have to be cleaned? I mean, I'm thinking of the little rotunda sitting area next to the ice cream shop, the very popular, very delicious ice cream shop.
Yeah.
That could get pretty dirty, quickly. If people are not careful, what would we do to keep that clean?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm curious how often it is cleaned now, like the sites that exist. From what I imagine, from what I've been talking with the vendors, it's pretty. They're essentially experts at what they do. They have been the very first mosaic foundry in America. So over the years, they've built up this very excellent product. And in terms of cleaning, I think it's within the realms of how it is being cleaned now. It will be matched.
As long as there's communication and
Yeah.
clear instructions as to how to, because the last thing I'd hate to see is a beautiful mosaic being laid down, and then after a few power washes, bits and pieces of it popping off or whatever else may end up happening. Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Bill Bass from the Bass Projects. We're the art consultants, been working with the city on this project and others. Just to point, obviously mosaic tile historically is, and one of the reasons we suggested tile for this with Kasha and the other artists was that a historically very sustainable material, particularly easy to clean. As part of our end of the project, for Kasha's project and all the other projects in Glendale, we work with conservators to provide a conservation and maintenance report, which we will give to the Montrose Shopping Park Association. And that'll include everything from cleaning procedures to maintenance, but typically tile like this can be simply like power wash. So,
I understand, and certainly there's historically well-preserved Roman mosaics that have been unearthed, that have remained intact, but I don't know if the Romans had to deal with chocolate malted crunch that's been baking in the 90 or 100 plus degree heat for days and gets caked in.
And that's a good point, and that's exactly why we want to have for every project, have a conservation maintenance report. So it'll be delivered to the business district, to the business locally. But the thing we like about the tile is it can literally be power washed. So it won't stain. Chocolate ice cream can sit on there for 3 days baking, and it'll hose right off.
Right.
So, sorry, just wanted to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Najarian?
Thank you. Nice artwork. Is it 3 separate benches?
3 separate benches, yes.
But it's called, the name is just Our Garden
Our
Spot.
Garden.
That covers 3 of those.
Yeah, so the way I thought about it is, it's in terms of a series. So this is the starting point to a series of these 3 benches. Our garden spot, I mean, if you think about it, it could be seen as like our garden spots plural.
I would have
terms of-
understood it if I
Yes.
saw a plural, but, okay,
That's
so it's
fair.
all 3 of those.
Yeah,
those
but I
concepts.
specifically kept with what the Glendale manager, or the railroad manager, how he described Montrose overall, which is the garden spot of America. So for me, it was a little bit stealing from that idea where it's not just these gathering spaces, it's not just these circular benches, it really is universal and all-encompassing of Glendale.
Somewhere I read, and perhaps, obviously, these are probably not the ones, but there was a request to remove one of these or more because of view obstruction for crosswalk purposes. Are you familiar with, did I read that somewhere, or am I?
Councilmember Najarian, it was stated at the last council meeting, it was brought up. Yeah, these are short walls within those landscaped areas adjacent to some crosswalks that we'll have to look at for potential removal.
So we're going to be looking at these for removal? Is that what you're saying?
No, we'll look at those separately.
Okay, so there are these seating areas, but in addition, there are other walls, you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, so we're not, those other walls with the safety issues are not,
Correct.
not affected by these? Okay.
Correct.
Was that last meeting?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Garpetian?
Yes, thank you. A couple of quick questions for you. I want to understand it because I'm not an artist, so I want to get a grasp on this. So the exterior of the wall, the top of the wall, the interior, the backrest, if you will, they're all plastered and painted and sealed.
Correct.
And some of them have, on the exterior part, have a design. Is it painting or it's mosaic too?
That's going to be paint.
On the exterior part of it?
Yeah.
And the mosaic, and under the bench, the wall under the bench, the seating area, that's plastered as well?
So underneath the bench, the wall, I had long discussions with the vendor and they said no one's gonna see the mosaic under there. So they recommended to leave it with the plaster and paint.
So it will be kind of like matching the exterior part of it?
Yeah,
Okay.
all color matched.
And the mosaic is made, I was told that it's going to be made in Mexico?
Yes.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah. So these are the guys who worked with Siqueiros. They've worked with Diego Rivera, working with all sorts of levels and tiers of artists to turn their work into mosaic. So that's one of the outputs that they are known for.
And I'm asking questions because I want to get an understanding. The size of the mosaics, are they very small or they are larger pieces?
They're going to be some small pieces and some large pieces. They're all about the 1/4 inch thinness. And then like imagine small squares or rectangles. And then certain areas where there's a larger surface area of one flat color, those they will custom to be a little bit bigger. So it's space saving.
Because mosaic is like your photo pixels. The more you have, the smaller they are, the more clearer it gets. So
Yeah, and because these areas are like 10 feet wide, it's going to be pretty detailed because the pieces are very small.
And the colors, I mean, I think it's the printer. One of them is very light pink, and on the other pages they're a little darker. Do you know, they say your personal taste has no friend in general, you know, so many people like different things. So the one that is very light pink, and especially I understand you mentioned that it's done that way because it doesn't absorb heat, because it's open to the weather. There's no shade in that area.
Yeah.
is it this kind of a pink, or because on the other, other pages they're a little bit darker? What color is it? Which one is the right color? That's what I want to understand.
I think we're gonna go through, like, this is the overall concept, so I'm gonna be mindful of that as I finish out, like, the design and give them a high-res image of the work. I'm also gonna work directly with them about choosing specific colors, so it's not gonna be too light.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
who's they? You say you.
The vendor who's
Oh, the
translating
vendor.
the work.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one last question: the bench, the seating area, is it still cement or concrete with the colored particles in there, like they do on concrete floors?
We're actually switching it over to, it's called a variegated tile. So it's going to be a glass tile also with a similar feel to the mosaic, since it's
Okay.
produced by the same team.
Okay.
And they're going to be just like one by one and staggered next to each other. So it actually won't look like the image that you see there. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but this specific tile is it's variegated, so it has a little bit of like a handmade looking quality. So it's gonna feel really
It's not all
nice.
flat. It has some
It
variations.
has some
yeah.
variation in the texture that's subtle, and so because it's a glass seat, it will just feel really nice to sit on as well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do we have any speakers on this?
We do, we have 2 speaker cards.
Well, let's go through questions and comments on them. Councilmember Brotman?
Yes. Great minds think alike. I have written down here, great story, QR code, question mark. So, because I saw, the renderings in the report, and I thought this really looks nice. But after hearing your story, it kind of came to life for me. So it would be great if people could hear those stories, understand the story of the peacock and why the butterfly and all the other things you talk about.
Perfect.
So I love it. I really appreciate how respectful and sensitive you've been to the local, history and geography and flora and fauna and culture and the environment, the specific environment for each of the benches, adjacent buildings, and you talk about the trees. I mean, it's amazing. And I don't think we've ever on any of these projects had the artist come and speak to us. So to staff, I think this is really, really great. And it makes it all just so much more real. So I love it. Most of the questions I think that I would have had have been answered. Just seems like you've done a very thorough job, and I'm excited. I guess my question would be, how long is it going to take for us to be able to see these in the wild?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I'm also I'm curious whenever we decide to start and initiate it. For me, the timeline looks like finalizing the design, which will take about a month to like up to 55 days, same amount of time for the production of the mosaic too. And in the meanwhile, there will be about a month within that while it's getting produced to do all of the metallic specs and working with the contractors to get the walls primed. So that's going to be about, I believe, like a month within that as well. And then I have, let me pull out the timeline. Okay. And then shipping from the mosaics from Mexico to LA is about 12 to 15 days. The steel and fabrication, if we do those steel elements, with polishing and finish time is about 20 to 30 days. Installation done in about 10 to 12 days for the mosaic. So I think all around it's going to be, I mean, I'm not sure if we can just get it, like be gung-ho and get it by December or like before December. To me, it's likely, but it's up to you if you have any holidays that we need to be cognizant of, and then we can.
It'll be nice to have it in there before Christmas, but whatever, it's
I
going
would
to
hope
take
so.
what it takes. But I also want to say I'm just really impressed with, I'm impressed with you, and it was so clear, talking to, I talked to somebody from the Arts and Culture Commission, there was like no question. They wanted this, your work, and everything else was really just, there was a big gap between yours and everything else. And I understand the folks from the Shopping Park Association were also very much of one mind on this. So I think it's really great.
Thank you so much.
Great. We will take the speakers now.
We have two public speakers. The first public speaker is Steve Pierce.
Thank you so much for your presentation.
You have
Mayor
3 minutes.
Satrian, City Council members and staff, my name is Steve Pierce. I'm the Montrose Communications Administrator, and I think, first of all, my purpose for being here is just to support what you just heard. That's absolutely brilliant, and we thank you very much. We've had such great support from the city. Jennifer spent many, many hours with us, going through this with us, and I think we're very excited about this. It brings a reinvigoration to Montrose. Montrose is a destination spot, as you all are aware, and this just brings people to Montrose and gives us a reason to come to Montrose. We hope this is not the end of the artwork. We want more artwork. So with your support, and we thank you very much for what you've done for us so far, Montrose is going to be the place to come in Southern California, and we thank you.
Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Maureen Palacios.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members and staff. My name is Maureen Palacios, and I'm the proud owner of Once Upon a Time Bookstore in Montrose, which has been designated America's oldest children's bookstore. I love stories. Obviously, I'm a bookstore. I'm also a member of the board of the shopping park, and I'm here to support. I just want to make sure that we have wonderful support of the Montrose Circular Benches proposal as presented by Jennifer, Principal Arts and Culture Administrator. All of the board members have been impressed with the professional outreach that Jennifer and her staff have shown the shopping park, as we have been active members with this project from the beginning. We are absolutely delighted with our garden spot and hope that this is the beginning, as Steve said, the beginning of more art along with other revitalization projects, some of the safety things that you mentioned, and more awareness. Shoppers and customers are going to come to our wonderful, unique business district to see these wonderful, beautiful circular benches. So thank you, Jennifer, and all your staff, and we thank the council for your consideration.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no other comments, do I have a motion?
I'll move the item. Oh,
Sure.
Oh,
Go ahead.
just because I was asked, and I have to ask this question, just being fiscally responsible, maybe the staff can answer this. $100,000 a bench, it's a big ticket number. I'm sure it's all worth it. It's just a beautiful design. I'm all for it as well. But can someone explain what the major cost of that $100,000 per bench is? Is it the mosaic? Is it the design of it? Is it the installation?
Great questions. I think one of the things when we look at public art, in our experience, so we've managed hundreds of public art installations for cities, for developers. For the amount of work between the design, the fabrication of the custom tile, the installation, these are right in line with typical works of this scale. I think from our perspective, if we're looking at it as we're getting 3 benches, I think look at it as you're getting 3 very active, fairly large-scale landmark art installations. I think when we frame it as a bench, it seems like that's a lot of money for a bench. But when we look at it as we're getting 3 major public artworks, that from our perspective as consultants, we are really hitting, you can put something on the corner that people can see from a distance, but these are 3 art installations that are highly detailed, custom materials, custom designed, and will be active and engaging parts of the community. Where, I mean, we look forward to hopefully people sitting down having ice cream and spilling on these, right? It's really like these are hitting all the points in public art that we really try to retain. So I would try to look at it not as fiscally we're buying 3 benches, as in we're acquiring 3 major public art installations.
No, I
and then again,
understand.
so the budget for these, I think, are really in line with what we would see across similar scaled artworks.
Right,
And it is coming from the Urban Arts Fund.
No, I understand.
right,
I understand. That's not what I'm. I understand it comes
Yeah.
from the.
No, I think it's a good
believe me,
question in terms of the budgets.
Maybe let me rephrase that. I didn't mean just 3 benches. You bought a 3 bench and installed it. These benches are being converted into an art piece, basically. That's what I meant. So.
Yeah.
Not,
no, but
not
I think
having
it's,
3 benches. Of course, it's not 3 benches. These are well thought, well designed art pieces with a great story behind it. But we have to be fiscally responsible. I wanted to understand what the major costs of these projects are coming from. That's all.
yeah, a lot of the cost really is in the fabrication, the prep, and the installation costs. And I think our job as a consultant, working with Jennifer and library staff across all these projects, and this is sort of like our job is to try to get as much value out of the public funds for all the art installations as possible. So, that's part of our job too, is to manage those budgets and try to be as fiscally responsible with the delivery.
Appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you. I'll second the motion if there's a motion.
And perhaps when they are finished, when we're doing the opening, we can have the artists do the unveiling in front of the bookstore and then tie the whole thing together. So, and some of the pieces maybe you brought or you took from for the art pieces themselves, if they're like old archives, maybe we can have like an exhibit, outdoor exhibit or something. But just some ideas around that. We have a motion and a second. May we have roll call?
Yes, council members Brotman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Asatian.
Yes. And what's next? Thank you so much.
Next is item 2, management services regarding Sister City program follow-up. A motion directing staff on governance structure. B, resolution of appropriation for funding an hourly/part-time senior administrative analyst. C, resolution of appropriation for funding a full-time senior administrative analyst. And D, motion to increase the citywide authorized salaried position count.
Great. Mr. Galanian.
Yes, Mayor Sargent, members of City Council, this item is a follow-up to the direction we received from City Council at the June 25th meeting. And based on that direction, staff already has completed several steps. And Stephanie McLeon, our Legislative Affairs and Communications Manager, will be presenting this item, and essentially will be seeking direction on governance structure so that we can start rejuvenating our Sister City program as soon as possible. Stephanie?
Great. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. So thank you. To reiterate, on June 25th, we received council direction and we made sure to follow up on those efforts. One was to include friendship cities in records and outreach, which we've done. Second, to create records and inventory tracking. We've created a catalog of all gifts received to date, as well as our inventory of our records. Next is rejoining Sister Cities International, which we have done, and reaching out to inactive sister cities, which we have done, and we've heard from all but Tlaquepaque. And after that was engaging community members about their interest in a proposed committee or advisory group. And I'm happy to report that we have received community interest in this. And then lastly, why we're gathered here today is presenting the governance structure options and asking you folks for direction and next steps. As an overview, we have 11 sister cities across 7 countries, and we have 4 friendship cities across 2 countries. I'll dive into the governance structures. We have 4 in total. First is the committee structure. Based on our research, some of the benefits of the committee structure, similar to other citywide committees, is easy to establish and modify, flexible and quick to assemble. Some of the challenges we see is limited authority due to advisory and less structured and in decision-making. A more formal approach would be a city commission as a governance structured type. As is with any city commission, a formal authority and recognition, city oversight, transparency, stable governance, eligibility for grants, as well as abiding by Brown Act. Some of the challenges is more bureaucratic, slower decision-making, and requires formal establishment through the city. I'll go over the next two, and then I'll take a moment to pause to address any comments as well as questions. The next two are the 501c3 model. This was a model that had many questions at the June 25th meeting. Some of the benefits that you see here are formal authority and recognition, can raise funds independently, greater control over program activities. Some of the challenges that you see is the requirement of formal establishment as well as ongoing compliance that may be a burden, and need for dedicated board and management, as well as potential funding challenges, The last model that you see, similar to committee, but would require leveraging mutual resources between city and a community organization, nonprofit. Some of the benefits we see with this partnership model is quick implementation with an MOU, existing ties and community engagement through nonprofits, existing volunteer base. We see that it's independent from city but aligned with city mission, as is in the MOU. Some of the challenges that we see here is the city may have less direct control over the program and operations, as well as differences in governance and accountability standards, and staffing resources and commitment from said nonprofit. So before moving forward, these are the four models. I can answer any questions or address any comments, and if I do not know the answer today, please note that I will follow up with you at a later time, especially if it's specific and something we haven't covered here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing the,
Oh, I put up one. Did I not do it right? Oh. You don't see me?
okay, that's that. Okay, go
You
ahead.
see me? I actually wanted to just ask a question or two first. So you have these two models, a 501c3, and you say that's similar to Glendale Youth Alliance, and then you have the partnership model similar to Ascensi. Would that also be similar to like what we had with Glendale Arts when they were managing the Alex, right?
In terms of the 501c3 model or the partnership model?
The partnership.
I'm going to have to get back to you. I believe that may be the case, but let me follow up on that.
I mean, they were a 501. I guess what I'm trying to understand is what's the difference between a 501c3, like you're saying, that Glendale Youth
That's a
Alliance,
good question.
and somebody else setting up, like Glendale Arts is their own, they set up a 501c3, right?
Right.
And we worked with them. I mean, isn't that what Pasadena has? I guess, you know, there's a 501c3 that's independent of them.
Right.
That they just, maybe they support them with a little bit of funding.
Right.
But as far as I understand, they're not on there, they're not officially on the board.
Right.
So is that the 501c3 model or is that the partnership model?
So without that city signatory and creating a 501c3 specifically dedicated to the Glendale Sister Cities program, then we would be looking at the 501c3 model. If we're approaching a community organization to take this work on and to carry the torch forward in the form of an MOU, we would not need to require the articles of corporation and all of the other items that are required in 501c3. One is approaching a community organization with an MOU, which is the partnership model. The 501c3 model would closely be related to Glendale Youth Alliance in the sense of it's under the umbrella of the city. And as noted on June 25th, there, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a consensus if we were to move forward in this direction to have a city signatory. So that's, I believe, what would differentiate the two models. Does that
Okay.
help?
Yeah, so Pasadena and Burbank would be a partnership.
Overarching,
They would be a partnership
No,
model.
they would be the 501c3 model because
Well-
they created a solely nonprofit for their city's sister city program. They didn't approach an existing nonprofit to take this work on. Everything was started from scratch.
If I may, may I?
Yeah.
So, Madam Mayor, members of council, just using you mentioned the Alex Theater. If I recall correctly, previously there was a board, an art board that had Glendale members and members of the community, and at some point it was decided that there was an organization that would, interested in individuals that were interested in starting an organization to be involved more directly in the arts in Glendale. And so they created a nonprofit, and then, yes, you're right, we had an agreement with them, a lease and management agreement, by which so it became a partnership model. But I think what I'm hearing from Stephanie is that in Pasadena and Burbank, they actually created the nonprofit and appointed its members, and that's where it becomes a city-initiated 501c3 model. And in that case, you have more legal and bureaucratic requirements that are then imposed on the city in terms of Brown Act, Public Records Act, those sorts of things. I think that's the distinction.
Okay, and so it's kind of a subtle distinction, but if you take the fact that, okay, we know that there's a Korean Sister Cities Association, it's a 501c3.
Right.
So if that association, let's say if they said, no, we're going to change this, we're going to make this a sister city association for all the sister cities, create a board that's going to include, maybe Edith Fuentes, the people from all these different, representing all these different countries, they could do that, right?
Right.
And we could just work with them.
Right.
And
It is
that's
an
the
option.
partnership model.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay. But
Exactly.
then we wouldn't have any, we don't have signatory, we don't have any formal control. Okay, I just want to understand that.
There are, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, but there are two other models, right?
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in those, but that's why I'm not asking about them.
I think when I brought this up, there was a couple of things that I was trying to address. So I kind of want to work through how we get there. Number one is that this council gets at least an annual plan or an annual report from whatever entity that is. That also includes any and all visits or programs and partnerships that were discussed by council members, staff, or the mayor. One of the issues for me was that there's really no archive of and information available of the different mayors or council members having had visited, and even just being able to go to staff and say, who are our contacts at the different cities and or what have we done, right? And so I'm looking at a model that allows for that to happen, where this council is able to get that report. And when I say an annual plan, I'm not talking about an extensive thing, right? I'm saying, okay, here are the two things that we're going to work on for, let's say, our sister city in Korea. But for there to be some sort of activity where it's not just, people taking leisurely visits or delegation visits, having conversations, and then nothing is really followed up on. The second part is the fundraising opportunity and the ability to have some sort of, I don't even want to say jurisdiction, but,
Oversight.
Not over, I don't want to do oversight either. I think I had addressed this during the last meeting where, if it's an entity that is managed by individuals, right? We don't if that person leaves, and they are operating under the name of the Glendale Sister City Association, for example. Whatever that board does also is a reflection of us as a city. And so twofold, addressing somebody not, and I'm not saying malicious, I'm just saying like, you know, they decided to move. And with them took the sister city signatory ability and whatnot. And what do we do at that point? And which model addresses that issue? And is there a hybrid of two that allows for that to happen? And the reason I ask that is because my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that when GYA was first formed, it was like a certain model where there was a signatory from the city, and then it moved on to be its own nonprofit. So I don't, if you can help guide, you know, which mix of these models would address some of the issues that I have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not looking for a commission. I don't think we need to do that. I think that's too much.
Thank you for those questions, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Brotman. In terms, I'll address them one by one. In terms of the council, the annual reporting, progress, developments, with any of these governance structure models that would be accomplished. In terms of the fundraising capability, more than one have that opportunity, whether it be in the form of fundraising or eligibility for grants. So both the committee, the commission are both eligible for grants, as well as the 501c3. And the partnership model would also be eligible for grants as well, because you would be working with a community organization. So in terms of what model may fit best, depending, based on the feedback that we received from you all on the 25th, we would like to take a measured approach, which is why you see 4 options for consideration today, of which, when talking about the speed of giving this effort legs, one of the most flexible and easiest to do is the committee option. Because of the flexibility, because of the interest of the community that already exists, as well as the sister cities that have re-engaged. As mentioned, all but one have responded with enthusiasm to get started on projects. I believe that more than one of these can make sure, or more than one of these models can fulfill those requirements.
So for the committee model, when you say it's eligible for grants and then even for fundraising, where would the money go?
So the committee model would be eligible for grants. In terms of fundraising, I think I misspoke there. I don't believe that it would be eligible for fundraising, as it would be a part of the city's operations.
How do we do it for the Women's Commission?
Mayor Satrian, could you repeat the question?
I know that, for example, the Women's Commission used to do its own fundraising and programming. Do we know how that structure was?
My understanding is that the Commission on the Status of Women used to hold yearly fundraisers for the commission, and that's how the funds were raised. But they have not
but
been
how were
doing
they?
The question is, where do those funds go? Because this is a commission, and they have their own specific funding mechanism. We have a account set up that goes there. that
And
gets
would you be
deposited.
able to set up an account for a committee?
Yes.
Yes. We would be able to accept donations for a committee and be able to allocate them specifically for sister city efforts. City Manager Galanian, correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
That
that's
is
what I said.
correct,
We can
right?
set up an account through our finance budget staff, and it will have a mechanism for expenditures and revenues that come in as part of the fundraisers.
So from the sound of it, for me at least, for the things that I'm concerned with or would like to move forward with, the committee structure not only addresses all of them, but is also the easiest and fastest way to do it.
Fastest, yes.
That is correct.
Because you're still forming some committee of individuals, but then it's not a, yeah, okay. All right. And that would still include, I think we had a consensus on starting with a part-time staffer.
Correct. There's a
Yes.
resolution attached, Mayor, that if that's council's desire and direction, that will have to be approved as well.
Okay. Councilmember Najarian?
I think Councilmember Garpetian would be next. Did you have your hand up on this one?
It has you listed first, so.
Okay. So I do prefer the committee.
Sorry.
I'll be quick. I do prefer the committee system. I want to keep our costs as low as possible on this. So if an hourly part-time is the bare minimum, I want to start there. I don't want to have a full-time staffer in. I want to ask whether donations, let's say someone wants to donate to this, let's say we call it the Sister City Committee, are those donations tax exempt?
Councilman Najarian, anybody can make a donation to the city, and if it has a charitable purpose, it would be tax exempt. So it would, as long as it serves the same purpose, you would make a donation to a nonprofit, it would have the same tax exempt donation.
All right, so I would support that. That still gives us the flexibility. If things get more involved, we can always step up our game in terms of the organization, the staffing, the format of the Sister City Committee, Commission, whatever we do. But let's start, I'd like to see us starting at this level. And I'm not sure if there's an interest to bring Talakipaki back into the fold. I don't know why they didn't answer. They used to have quite a, I mean, these are back in the Bob Yusefian and Dave Weaver days. They had, I think, several productive visits to Talakipaki. So I may have some connections out there. Talakipaki is a suburb of Guadalajara. If anyone is interested in that, we can do that. But again, I do think the important thing is that we have a local Glendale grassroots support for these cities to have it. So we could have the best organizational structure in the world, but unless there's people, unless you've got, the Armenian version of Changli and the Mexican version of Changli, I think we're going to be challenged to really get to the level of involvement that we're looking for. But I do support the direction we're going, and those are my comments.
Councilmember Najarian, I will say that for the 2 visits I had to Armenia, the overwhelming number of people that are residents that reached out during that time, noting that they're originally from Kapan and originally from Gyumri, and if there's ways for them to be involved, they would love to. I think this is a great opportunity with that committee for there to be, I guess, working committees like they usually have now with each of the sister cities. But maybe having some info out to the public of like, hey, we have these things if you want to be involved, if you want to do something. Because I think the general public just knows that we're sister cities, but they don't know how to be involved. So, okay, Councilmember Garpetian.
I want to understand that I'm not interested in forming a commission and full-blown commissions that we have like other commissions, because our plate is full. The committee that we're kind of discussing, is it the city forms a committee and invites the members of the community to come and join that committee? Is that how are we going to do it?
That's what I was thinking, similar to the Armenian Genocide Committee.
And Councilmember Garpetian, we already have interested party.
Right, I saw that.
So it will be a joint effort in creating this committee.
And I think when the committee is formed, each members of the communities with our different sister cities in 7 different countries, I think they need to contact those sister cities that we have and understand what are their goals and needs and wants, and what is the purpose of having is it just a document, or is it a cultural exchange? Is it, because last time we had a city from Armenia that they were looking to have an exchange in having their products be kind of promoted here. I don't know if that's part of this project or not, or is it part of the sister city or not, because they have to be clear when we become a sister city, what is it that we can or cannot do? What is it that we want or we don't want to do? So as far as the cost goes, I'm not for having a full-time employee, maybe just, as was mentioned, a part-time, but very limited, to find out what are the goals are, what is the plan, basically, have the committee to meet. And are they going to meet like the Armenian Genocide Committee events that they meet once in a while, or is it going to be a monthly meeting? Who's going to run these meetings?
Councilmember Garpetian, Member of City Council, Mayor Satrian. So those are the details that need to be sorted out. If we get direction from council, once we hire a person to help out, because Stephanie's plate is also full. And once we get this committee created and have membership, then, to your point, we'll ask what their goals and aspirations and objectives are, and how often they want to meet, what the funding mechanism, do they want to do fundraising? All of that will come back to council as a report once the committee is formed and they've had their first or second meeting.
The one item I would like to note on the committees just themselves, I think it would be worthwhile for us to have our GUSD and GCC partners on that. I know that recently in meeting with GUSD and GCC, we talked about the student exchange programs and starting that up again, and I think it just fits perfectly with that. So, all right. Councilmember Kasakian, do you have any comments?
Generally, I believe in the most scaled back approach to this. It's not that I don't think there's value, but I think it needs to be driven by nonprofits and the public, and I'm very hesitant for us to immerse or entwine ourselves with those organizations that bring these items forward. I don't think it's worked entirely well, but I think some of it has to be, I believe it has to be attributed to just the general interests of the public. And so, in as minimal resources as we can dedicate to this, I'm in favor of that. I think that, having a part-time person working on this minimally just to make sure that our end of our obligations are handled is sufficient. I do not want us to distract any city resources from the more prevalent issues that are facing our community as a whole and that we're hearing from residents. Certainly it's nice to have, some cities in visiting a couple of Canadian cities as part of the State Department supported delegation I was in. The City of Edmonton, Canada has a whole protocol office with about 3 staff members that make sure that they roll out the red carpet for individuals who come and visit the city. But Edmonton is the capital city of the province, and it certainly is understandable why they would do that. Here in the city of Glendale, I don't think we have necessarily as high of a obligation or requirement to do so.
All right, so are you okay with the committee structure and starting off with the part-time?
I'll be fine with that.
Okay. Seems like there's a,
Yeah,
Councilmember Brown.
I just asked questions before I didn't make any
apologies.
comments.
Yes,
So,
go ahead.
I mean, I don't feel terribly strongly, so I'll go with the consensus here, but I will say my preference would be the partnership model, because I think the partnership model would be the least intrusive and the least demanding of our resources. The committee, let's not kid ourselves. When we, I've been on that Armenian Genocide Committee twice. It's going to be on Stephanie or whoever is running it. It's going to be a lot of work. Between each meeting, she's the one that's going to be taking the notes. She's the one that's going to be following up with the individuals, making sure people attend. A city-run committee is going to be a lot more work than if we reach out to somebody like a Chang Lee and some of the other people that were mentioned and ask them to create a 501c3 that we then partner with. So I think that would be the most community-led and the least burdensome on us to take that route. That would be my preference. I mean, I'll go with a committee if that's what everybody wants, but I think that's going to be pretty burdensome on our staff, and I don't think it will be as effective as really engaging the community in a, their own 501c3 where they can raise money, they can have a board, they can determine their own governance. We could support them like Pasadena does with small amounts of money. What Pasadena gets like 15 to 20,000 a year. We can help them with things like that. But that would be the way I would go.
Councilmember Brotman, I think it's whoever comes on to take this on can also create that structure around it where the roles and responsibilities are identified. And having individuals like Chang Lee and Edith and whatnot that are already doing the work, I think the expectation would be set as such for them to continue the work as they have been, but an opportunity for us as a city to bring everybody around the table. And again, I think Edith is going to end up still working on just, the Santa Rosa. Chang is still going to be working with his folks, but it also gives us an opportunity to engage and make their support system bigger. I think it's all a matter of how the staff structures it and the roles and responsibilities identified prior to calling that meeting.
He has a 501c3. The Glendale Sister City Association is a 501c3. So I imagine that'll continue to operate, and he'll just represent that 501c3 on this committee. But anyway, I'm just saying, it's going to be a lot of work for us.
He has a 501c3.
What is it called?
The Glendale Korea Sister Cities Association.
This is what I mean, right? Like, didn't know.
We need a clearinghouse for all this information.
And
Yeah.
not that there's an issue with having something out there. I'm saying, God forbid something happens to Chang Lee,
Yeah.
right? There's a.
Yeah, but that's why.
I've seen. I've also seen it with Kapan. This is where like some of my concerns came from the get-go, where we thought the C3 still existed. It didn't because the fees weren't paid or individuals like didn't continue on working on that sister city association. So I feel like the committee model is a cleaner way, and then if we want to boost it later, we can. But it's a.
So it will basically be a clearinghouse. I think that's a good way to put it. It'll be a clearinghouse for all these different, very distinct efforts, some of which will have 501c3, some of which may not. But that's what it'll be.
But it also gives us the flexibility to have our own grants and.
Does that become your partnership model?
Yeah,
No,
I
it
think
just.
whenever it's my turn.
Yes, please go ahead.
Looking at it again, I think partnership model is not a bad model because the members of the community can come together, form a partnership, and is that 501c3, Mr. Brotman, you were mentioning, the partnership part?
Well, I think the difference between partnership and 501c3 is fairly subtle, but I guess the partnership would be if somebody else sets it up, and we have nothing to do with it, and we just sign a contract with them.
All these different, groups or different representatives of different countries or different sister cities can be a member of that.
Yeah,
And
they have a
can start
board.
programs
Right.
and bring ideas to us, and we help them achieve those ideas. That's
Exactly,
the
exactly.
thing. I don't have a problem with that either. I think,
You're still doing that under the committee structure.
well, on the committee structure, the burden is on the city
Yeah,
to
burden's on the city.
have an employee and go after all these programs and organize the meetings and schedule the meetings between all of them. If it's between them, they can just have, I don't know, a meeting every quarter, every other month, set a date and do it that way. I don't mind the partnership model either, because I think that would that won't put any more pressure on the city as we move forward. And, you know, they can put the program together and contact every sister city and say, look, this is the program that we have. Why don't you participate in it and bring us ideas? I think that would be a lot better, because if we have a person in charge, that person has to go after all of them, try to bring them in and give them ideas as to what the city is going to do and what are you going to. I think if they have a program, they bring the program to us, it's much easier.
I mean, they would still be doing that. And as I see, the committee model is actually the simplest of models versus the partnership. And if we wanted to scale up and have it be a partnership, then, I mean, staff has literally identified the differences, and the committee model is the simplest. If you are looking for the simplest, that is the simplest.
And if I may add, Mayor Asadian and City Council, there's challenges obviously with most of these, but when it comes to partnerships, our reliance, your reliance is completely on them. Now, they may not have the resources, they have full-time jobs, and they may come and go, so it'll be less of a connection with the partnership as it would if we had some kind of control, at least when it comes to coordination with all these different entities and different individuals. Just putting it out there.
This is being recorded, so don't complain later that we have a lot on our plate and we can.
No, I agree, and I appreciate that. All of you have raised concern about that, and that's my concern as well. We are asking for $53,000 in appropriation for a half-time employee, and if things change during the course of putting this thing together, or council or this committee decides that another structure is more effective, then we can simply change it.
So I would say that the part-time staffer that is hired, as they are putting together the roles and responsibilities and kind of structure of how this would work, takes into account all the comments and concerns that were raised by me and my colleagues on both where the burden falls, involvement, and so forth.
What is the qualification of this part-time employee that you would be looking for?
It'll be at a management analyst level.
Management analyst level.
But it's just an hourly part-time employee, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Is there an agreement to keep to go with the committee model?
I mean, I'm not crazy about it, but I'll support it. We can just try it out and see what happens.
Trying to see where we're at. Councilmember Carpet?
I'm okay with that. I mean,
Okay,
again, you can visit it in
okay,
6 months or a year and see if we
Alright.
have to make any changes.
awesome. All right, what do you need from us?
We have a motion and a resolution.
So the motion at 2A would be on the type of governance structure, and I think if you're inclined to go the committee route, it would just be to authorize, because it's, again, we don't want to make a formal creation of committee, authorize the city manager to explore the creation of committee. And then also, the motion at 2B would be, the item at 2B would be the resolution on the part-time staff member.
Awesome. Okay, does someone want to make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, roll call?
Council members Brotman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Asatryan.
Yes. Okay, and what's next?
Thank you
Next
very
Thank you,
much.
Stephanie.
Next is item 3, community development regarding update on the general plans, land use, mobility, and environmental justice elements, continued from July 30th, 2024. Public comment taken on July 30th, 2024. No additional public comment will be taken unless the matter substantially changes. A motion accepting the status report on the preparation of the land use, mobility, and environmental justice elements and proposed update to the general plan land use map, subject to council comments thereon.
Mr. Glonian.
Mayor Satrian, member City Council, as it was read into the record, this is continued from our last meeting of July 30th. At that meeting, Councilmember Kasakian was absent. Since then, he has watched the recording. He's held briefings with staff members on this report and this topic. We don't have a presentation. Staff does have something ready in case you'd like to see a summary of what took place at the July 30th meeting, as well as, I believe there were 6 questions, general questions that council had asked that staff can provide those to you, read them back to you so you'll remember them, and provide additional information. Mr. Calvert?
Well, before Mr. Calvert goes on, Councilmember Kasakian, do you have certain questions that you want addressed?
I think that, given that this item has come back and it's been at least 2 weeks since the last time the council met, perhaps a brief explanation as to why this, why now, from Mr. Calvert would be appropriate. Most of my questions were answered. There were questions about the increase in density and by right issues on these properties that my colleagues raised, and I've received the answers I needed, which is that ultimately on any city-owned properties, Coro properties as you dub them, the city would ultimately have the final say as to what goes there, what it looks like, what impacts it may potentially have, or benefits to the neighborhoods. And so my concerns about that have been satisfied because I don't want to just ring a dinner bell for individuals or developers who may come and start looking at these sites to put in the types of projects that I don't believe Glendale needs more of. If we hold the land, then we decide what goes there and when it goes there and how it looks. But I will ask Mr. Calvert to explain why this proposal has been brought forth to this body at this time.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. The reason why we have this in front of you now is this is part of a long string of general plan elements that need to be updated. And the land use really is one of the most important pieces. That is the information that goes to help predict circulation models, our needs for parks and open space. It's obviously factors into our housing element as well and the environmental justice. So this really is one of, though we have adopted our housing element, we need this piece before we can do the other pieces as well. And all of these need to be updated. All of them are far too old to be quite frank. So what we're looking for today is direction from council regarding what that ceiling is. Right? Whatever council direction we receive today is going to determine what will go into the environmental review. Do note that that does not mean that's what's being approved. For any of these potential changes in density, whatever that future zoning may be, that is not what council will be deciding here today. It is direction on what we would put into our EIR, what we'll evaluate, and we will come back several times to City Council before we make any decisions per council's direction on what that zoning and density ultimately should be.
And so what this is offering up saying these are the areas that we want to study to see if there was any development, what the impacts of it would be on the community.
That is correct.
Okay. And so with that, I do want to ask why on, like, for instance, on Central, I had some members of the community and the business community ask me, you know, we've been asking for increase in density along Central between below Chevy Chase all the way to Los Feliz, perhaps further down, an area where we've seen density in the past in certain areas with the Triangle Project, et cetera. Why was that not included in this?
So what's in this, the document before you now actually reflects what was done for Tropico. That has already changed. We've already made those changes in zoning, the densities that are there. If council wished to expand that and include more areas, today would be a perfect time for us to learn that so we can factor that in. So if you would like to see that go beyond just the boundaries of Tropico, that can be added.
I think it's appropriate to look at, you know, along Central where we have, you know, very low profile structures, not any residential or very minimal residential. I'm thinking of, you know, just the areas around where the Jones Fabric is and moving down where we have a few commercial plazas. But certainly along that corridor, I think that is an area that can sustain it. It's a gateway to other parts of the greater Los Angeles metro area, and it's something that I would be supportive of. I don't know if my colleagues see that as an area that's ready for density, but I certainly see it as one.
I'm in agreement in looking at that and adding that to.
I agree to it. I have other comments after you're done.
If I may ask, is there a street boundary that you would be wanting us to consider?
I think if Tropico has already undergone those changes, then up to Tropico. What is the northernmost boundary of Tropico? The Tropico area?
Councilmember Kasakian, there are a few parcels just north of Los Feliz Boulevard that are within the Tropico zone. Above that would be the commercial zone designations. At this point in time, if what I'm hearing from City Council, you'd like to go ahead and introduce just a slightly higher density allowance and also probably incentivize mixed-use development along those commercial
Absolutely.
corridors.
Yes.
Right now, we are proposing as part of our Glen Oaks Boulevard proposal to have mixed-use residential at that location along the BRT route. I might suggest to City Council that you continue that type of mixed-use land use designation along portions of Central Avenue as well. That would be consistent in terms of access to transit, access to commercial activities, essentially thoroughfares, vehicular thoroughfares, and consistent zoning as well.
That is, I think that in concept, when you state it that way, it sounds all well and fine. For me, it's mostly how do we see better projects that can kind of replace some of the older, more dated uses that we have along that stretch, because that is one of the gateways into the city. I don't want to see necessarily anything on brand, because on brand on that segment of road, we have our Brand Boulevard of cars. It doesn't necessarily make sense, but on Central, it can, I think, make sense. And then I'm glad you brought up Glen Oaks, because I think it's fine for certain parts of Glen Oaks. We spoke about this during the staff briefing. I would hate to see a lot of the smaller, older apartment complexes that I think have a lot of great character be touched. Those next to Grandview, between Grandview and Highland. My understanding is that is not part of this proposal, correct?
Correct.
And the other areas, it's fine to have more mixed-use development. We've seen some projects like the one that was at the old Bob's Big Boy site come about that look, pretty decent, and I think fit well with the neighborhood. What I would hate to see happen is what's happened in other parts of Los Angeles, like along where the metro stop is, along, I believe it's Western, and I want to say Hollywood, where you have that Ralph's, you have the Ross, but I mean, the type of residential projects that have gone in there have very little soul or character, extremely blocky. I understand the desire to fit as much in small space as possible. I would not want anything like that ever in Glendale. I think that would completely ruin the character of Glen Oaks, and we would not be able to live that down for generations.
With respect to, are you gonna read back the comments that we had from the last meeting? Because before we.
Yes, Madam
We-
Mayor.
we were-
Delia, it's on page, slide 9.
Actually, we were requesting direction on some of the comments that we heard. This is what you have before you, I believe was the old PowerPoint presentation. We have a brief one if you'd like to see this, but your comments actually with regards to the land use revisions were as such. I see everyone's flipping through. Would you like to have the brief PowerPoint presentation, or would you just like me to summarize the
I'm
comments?
okay.
Depends on how brief.
Just that slide? Okay.
I'm just gonna give you an example. Like I had talked about, I can't give you the specifics of the locations, but I had asked specifically for us to kind of do a bird's eye view and look at the different neighborhoods and make sure that each of the neighborhoods have an opportunity to have a market, a coffee shop, or whatever it may be. Oh, here we go, okay.
So the slide before you includes the points that staff would like direction on. One is, shall staff proceed with the map corrections? Would we then also allow the land use designations? And these would be the ones in the Pacific Avenue Gateway District, so to include 2 new higher density residential land use designations. Another one would be the changes to the land uses around the Pacific Avenue Gateway District, which would include higher densities, more mixed use, which is an appropriately located location in the Pacific Avenue Gateway District, simply because it's right directly adjacent to the DSP. It's right off the freeway, the 134 exit on Pacific Avenue, also just south of Glen Oaks and all adjacent to the Pacific Avenue BRT stop, and also the changes obviously proposed along Glen Oaks. Does council support the COROs, which would be, again, the city-owned residential overlays in specific areas? There was also a comment made to perhaps include a triangular parking lot south of the Dad's Club, the Little League baseball field. We do have a comment made, as Mayor Asatrian pointed out, to introduce commercial neighborhood serving commercial uses at key intersections within multifamily residential zones. So I believe that there was support for that. And were there any other?
I wasn't just talking about multifamily. I was just saying, like, I gave you guys examples of, let's say, Kenneth Village, or there's that one restaurant in the middle of the mountains that allows for that. What I'm looking for, again, is for each neighborhood, wherever they may be, to have the ability to have their local market or their local coffee shop, so you're not driving folks to, and I think that's, I'm not the expert in that. I'm just saying, like, you guys should be able to look at the map and say, well, here are the neighborhoods that really don't have that, and it requires somebody to, drive the distance to be able to, I don't know, pick up potatoes.
Exactly.
Mayor, we can look at that and see if there's some sort of designation or modification of one that's there. Do note that we cannot say a grocery store would go there or a marketplace the way we categorize uses, but we can look at creating opportunities where something like that could become possible at least.
Correct.
Right, I'm not talking about specific use. I'm just talking about, I guess, mixed use or commercial.
And we would be looking at neighborhood serving commercial uses, correct?
Okay. But you have multifamily residential, and so, for example, that Oak Cafe, which does great.
Which one is that? Wild
And
Oak?
we can
Wild
look into
Oak,
that. Yes, we can
right.
look into that.
It's in the middle of a single family, but it does great.
We
So.
can look into that.
Okay.
Are there any other comments?
Oh, this thing is a mess. Okay, Councilor Najarian?
So I still have my concerns about the 100 units per acre density. And the problem was that if we put that on the books, you come in with an SB 1818 or whatever sort of increase in density, you're going to end up with something that's significantly more. So when I look at 100, I'm looking at 100 or whatever number I choose to look at. I'm looking at that as the maximum. I'm not factoring in, but if they put in whatever, 10%, very low income, et cetera, it all of a sudden doubles. So I don't want, to the extent that this is what we're looking at, and perhaps as planners, you're looking at 100, as 100, but 100 really isn't 100. 100 could be much more. So I'm concerned about that number that we're picking. The other concern that I have, and it really disturbs me, is what's going on already with the city-owned residential overlay. There are developers who have already developed plans for those city-owned zones behind the church, next to the civic auditorium, and they're shopping it around, and they're saying, council's going to vote on this, and it's going to be a done deal. I want to stop that in its tracks. I don't want that. I don't even want the impression that those plans of the developers are driving the policy that we're making. So I would be of the mindset to eliminate all that community overlay And then if we're going to discuss it, let's discuss it separately. Because, you know, a couple people think, oh, if I get the jump, I'm going to be the first one in line, and I'm going to put those 1,000 units on that property south of the college. The community doesn't know about it. And on its face, this is very, you know, this is not very threatening at all. Oh, we're just going to talk in the future about putting some residential there. But if those people knew, again, you know, if we go to outreach, if those people in Royal, perhaps Ross Moyne, were aware that this is what it possibly could turn into, they'd be lining up, you know, down the hall. And the problem is, once we start this path, it gains momentum and it gains its own inertia. So I'm not happy that that what turns out to be a planning exercise here to develop this general plan is somehow being perverted by these developers who are hot and heavy, and they've got their connections, and they're going to be right there, and then it doesn't look good for us, and certainly the residents are going to say, well, you know, you guys knew this was going, and that's why you did this overlay zone to accommodate these developers. So that's my concern about that.
If I can ask a clarifying question on that. So are you bringing this forward because as part of our revenue potentials, we had told staff to look at city lots as potentials? And, you know, I do think that some of the concerns that Councilmember Najarian is raising are of concern. How does it usually work with developers coming up with projects and ideas, and what's the process like with staff? Because I know that, you know, we get it at the end, right? But obviously whoever wants to do something for economic development or development in general works through staff first, and then.
So this is in response to the conversations about the revenue generation. If you recall, we came a number of months before for the land use element and asked for that direction to incorporate the city properties in there, knowing that they don't have zoning. Honestly, I can't tell how many people have reached out about any city property once that discussion became public. We have had national brokers, we've had local Glendalean architects come to us with fully drawn out concepts, full concept ideas. Yes, we've heard about this one as well on that property. We can't stop them from doing that. We don't work with them to develop the plan. We do keep them updated as they ask, just like anybody else who has a curiosity about this. But if they're producing drawings and renderings and things of that nature, that is on their own recourse. So I would consider this a major disclaimer to that. We were exchanging some emails earlier. We will communicate with them to stop that kind of transmission of that information out as if it is fact, or as if it's a done deal. What I would say, Councilmember Najarian, one of your earlier points, we could take it out, absolutely. It's going to be hard to bring it back later on, though, because the odds of us cracking open the land use element in the near future is probably pretty limited. Much like the other numbers that we're putting in there, this is just an exercise, exactly that. We're looking at this, we're evaluating the potential impacts. If something like that were to be done, almost to your point of the 100 units, we may evaluate 100 units, but we may come back and you'll tell us you want 50 instead, recognizing density bonus, things of that nature. All of this is an exercise right now for us to understand the potential opportunities here. And then ultimately it's up to the council to decide whether or not you would like us to pursue that any further and make that into new zoning, changes in density, things of that nature.
I mean, you do, I mean, like, I'm obviously not going to go into details for like closed session items, but, you know, many of times, Mr. Calvert comes and says, we have this opportunity. Would you like me to negotiate, or would you like me to have the conversation or not? And that, you know, that's upon the city council at that time to make that determination. And I don't think, you know, with specific individuals or developers taking it upon themselves to say that somehow something's a done deal, and when we haven't even had the conversation, I can't make policy decisions based off of, you know, several individuals. But we did talk about at length when we were discussing potential taxes, And I think one of the things that we did land on, to not increase taxes, to make sure that we continue to have a healthy budget, was looking at revenue streams, and none of these things are things that we're committed to unless we actually get the project and like the project and the city council approves it.
If I could add one more thing to that as well, that kind of a big piece to this, we have no authority whatsoever to negotiate any of these deals. We have a surplus land act we have to go through. There's a process for that. We have to declare these either exempt. If they're not exempt, then we have to meet other requirements through RFP processes. In some cases, we have to use preferred affordable housing developers, depending on the context, so that we have no ability whatsoever, not us, not council at this moment, to do anything with those properties of this nature until we go through that process. And in this case, with the lots that are near GCC, they have no zoning right now anyways. So it literally is just an exercise, whatever it is that they may be doing, but there are a number of other kind of pieces to this process and timeline that we have to go through before we could even consider the potential of someone coming to us with an idea.
All right. Who wants to go next? Because my screen is.
I think you had Carpetian first.
Councilmember Carpetian.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions about the land use element. When you say we're updating our land use element, is it only focused on specific areas, or is the land use element for the entire city?
Actually, I'll let Velia answer this, but there are certain focus areas such as Tropico, right? We have changed the zoning for that before because of our transit-oriented development
When
plan,
did
and
we
now
do
we're
that?
updating the plan to incorporate that.
Right.
But there's other pieces in here that are kind of timely that I'll let Velia touch on.
So Tropico was done when?
In October of 2023, so last
So
year.
A year later, we're doing the land use element again. So it's not that if you don't do it today, it can't be done next year.
No, Tropico is separate. That was the actual zoning for that. Now we're incorporating that into our land use element after the fact to reflect correct information.
You answered my question. I don't want to make this a lengthy, very lengthy meeting. If those lots across the city, Glendale College is incorporated in this thing, I'm gonna vote against it. I don't think, if you wanna study the city parking lots, there are some in downtown area, there are some in outside downtown area, we can choose those. These are specifically chosen for that area, as well as the one in Montrose. So if these two lots are there, and bear in mind that when it comes back, you would need 4 votes for it. So we do all this work, we do the EIR and bring it back, community meetings and everything else, and you need 4 votes for it. And for these, everything I'm asking you today is what we talked about in the briefings yesterday and a week before. So I usually don't want to have a got you questions. That's why I asked most of my questions. This, I think for projects like this, we need to have the zoning code incorporated. So we will see which streets are being proposed, 100 units an acre, and which streets are mixed use and it's like 50 units an acre. Because I don't know at this time. I know I'm being told that this area around Pacific Avenue and Glen Oaks is being high density, but it doesn't tell me which streets. Also, I took a drive yesterday morning in some of the side streets in that vicinity, like Burchett, like Arden, like the one north of Glen Oaks, the Little Glen Oaks. They're very tiny streets, and we have so many really good apartment buildings there and so many good condominium projects there, as well as very nice office buildings. And I think when we want to study a project like this, upzoning an area, we have to understand, in order to make it 100 units, of course, it's not going to be 100 units, it will be 150 units because of AB 2097 that was passed thanks to our legislatures, that they can have not only 4 concessions, but instead of 35%, now they can go up to 50% increased in density. And the problem with that is that 50%, none of that 50% is going to be affordable. The affordable portion is only for that base number of density, which is like if it's 100, It will be 15% of 100, not 15% of 150 units. So there are so many units that I wouldn't want them to go because there are ownership housing in this area, and the chances of them being demolished and built, you know, or overbuilt or built again, is developed again, is not that high. I think we need to look at, especially some of these streets are one way, one direction, one lane in each direction, and by adding that many units here, and this only, I think what we need to look at is what Mr. Kasakian mentioned, like Central comes from Glen Oaks or the freeway all the way down to Colorado, it stops, and it starts from Las Feliz and comes up and it stops. I think there is a gap in between that you need to fill with the same kind of zoning, like tropical zoning, that will allow larger parcels that are developable, and you're not losing housing because they're being developed, because they're commercial, like the one you did on Glen Oaks area, which is all the commercial areas are being turned into mixed use, which you're not losing that much housing, because these are the more affordable ones these days. They're not newly built, they don't have maybe 2 parkings, they don't have air conditionings or what have you, so the rents are a little bit lower in those areas. So I think that area needs to be part of this project to look at the upzoning in that area wherever is appropriate. I think also I mentioned this, that some of the areas that were downzoned 2 or 3 times in the multi-residential areas, you have I don't know, a guy who purchased a property that has a duplex on it with the idea of building 8 units, you know, he lives in one, the kid lives in one, and they will rent the rest. The next door has 12 units, but now it was downzoned twice and he can only build 3 units. So who's gonna demolish 2 units and build 3 units? I think we need to look at that as part of this project to see where can be incentivized that the city grows organically. That's what it did. And these are the areas that were built in 70s, 80s, and in 90s. And when you hear about rents being increased in these areas, people say, I lived there for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. These units were home, they became home for them. It's not just a rental unit that they rent today and they live there for 6 months or 8 months and they leave. So my goal is for the future of this city, for the future of our next generation, to build housing that people can make it a home and stay there for 10 years, rent it for 10 years, or purchase it and live there. Is this part of the BRC? We are upzoning this area because of the BRC coming? I'm sorry, BRT. I knew that, I was just testing everyone to see if they're. So it's because of the BRT coming? Is that what it is?
Partial consideration along that corridor, increased rapid transit, modest to a handful of units per acre, I believe it is.
Right, that's along Glen Oaks, which is very moderate, as you mentioned, and it's fine. But the other areas that is being very increased, the density is being increased to very high density, is around Pacific, right? Pacific and Glen Oaks? Right, so it's becoming a gateway district like we have in downtown. Okay. So
if I may add something to that, we did receive prior council direction at the same meeting where we discussed some of the city-owned properties that at one point city council had asked that we do a specific plan for that Pacific Gateway area because of the affordable housing that was going in at Pioneer. And to be more efficient, rather than doing a specific plan, we folded into this work and we're evaluating it here instead, so that we're going to understand before we do something like a specific plan or change that zoning, that node can actually serve as a gateway. But that was prior council direction that we had received.
okay, I understand. So the ridership, I think, do we know when the BRT is coming? Maybe Mr. Councilmember Najarian can enlighten us later. I think we have to upzone it and design it based on when the BRT is realistically going to be here. Also, my suggestion would be to have a base lot size, a minimum lot size. Because our single families have a minimum lot size. You can't build a house on a 2,000 square foot lot, right? It has to be, I believe it's 5,500 square feet or what have you. So you encourage developments on larger parcels, right? Like one, I don't know, on the corner, what is that restaurant? Acapulco, for example. It's a very large site, right? You need to have a minimum lot size, so they won't build 50 units or 40 units on a 10,000 square foot lot. It's not a good living condition. I know we approved projects in other areas that they're still, next day they put it on the market to sell it and it's not being sold because it's very tiny units, no parking, it's very limited parking, and it's not a good living condition. So I believe we have to have a minimum lot size, so the lots that are in this area, they're larger, they can be developed faster. The rest can be, assembled lots, then they can purchase properties and assemble them in order to come up to that lot size. So I have a lot to say, but my biggest issue is the lots across the City College, and also filling in that if you want to look at this, as a design that is going to help us with our housing element, I think that part of Central is very, very essential. There already is proven, it has a proven record north of it and south of it, because they were developed. And, but again, you have to be careful about which areas are, there's good apartment buildings are, and which areas the condominiums are, because we don't want to lose them to small 600 square foot rental units. So with that, and that has to make common sense. I don't know if I tried to relate, I was able to relay my thoughts to you, but I think it's and having a tour is very, very, very helpful. I mean, you did that with us when we went to downtown and looked at the common open spaces, or not common, the publicly accessible open spaces that was developed, and they were not very efficient, very, very usable, because they built it over their parking lots and parking garages, and it was the vents coming out from there, and we couldn't even use it. So, and people got 8,000, 10,000 square foot more building because of that. And then after that, we changed it. So it's more usable these days. I think having a tour with council members in these areas to see, okay, we're adding 100 units in this street, is it reasonable or not? So that's where because when you want to make a left on Burchett, coming down Pacific, it took me 3 lights. And if the BRT is taking 1 lane out on that area, and you have only 1 traffic lane, with adding all these units there.
2 traffic.
So that's what I have right now.
Okay,
Councilmember Browning.
thank you. Yeah, just, I agree with Councilmember Garpetian's, sentiments about ownership housing, and we've talked about that, so I just want to be on record to say that I do support us, trying to maintain, expand that gentle density, I think is also a term you've used, definitely with an effort to try to maximize, ownership opportunities. Just wanted to say that, and I also wanted to say that I agree with the mayor, the mayor's comments about kind of, neighborhood commercial and town centers. Everybody loves Montrose, everybody loves Kenneth Village, and we have this sprinkling of other locations. So the more we can do that somehow or another, I think would be good. As far as, this, everything you have here, you're really studying these ideas. So I want to be more inclusive, and we can always take things out later. It doesn't require us to do anything. It just gives us the ability to do something. So I support doing all these things. Appreciate you putting in the triangular parking lot. From my perspective, and it has nothing to do with whether any developers are coming asking to develop anything, but we have these city parking lots. In particular, I go cut through virtually every day when I come here. I cut through that parking lot south of the Civic Auditorium. Most of the time, just sitting vacant, and that parking lot south of the Armenian Church sitting there vacant. We have a housing shortage here, and we have these huge vacant lots basically serving no real purpose. And so how we develop them, I don't know, but I think they should be used for housing in some way. So I definitely support that. It's also part of our financial strategy, our budget strategy, our revenue strategy that we've talked about. So we absolutely have to look at those, and doesn't mean we're going to build 10-story apartments in these places, right? We're gonna work with what fits into that neighborhood. I know in Montrose, there's going to be issues with parking. We're going to have to replace that parking, maybe underground or whatever it's going to be. Like all this stuff we'll have to deal with. But right now, this is the path we should go down, and we should study this and be prepared. So I support this proposal.
Councilmember Kasakian, and then I'll.
Sure. So one of the questions I have is regarding this whole process. So this would trigger staff, or it's a council giving you the authority to go and study the impacts of developments on these parcels, as we had stated earlier. At what point, when we see your report, can we say, that's not what we really want, and then exclude parcels?
As soon as we come back. Once we finish that evaluation,
Our
you could.
approval here in no way is, again, ringing a dinner bell for developers.
No, what will happen is after we complete that environmental review process, we'll come to council, give that update, and there you can make that choice. If you would like to take some out, if you'd like to reduce that 100 down to 50, all of that is eligible. What we tried to explain last time, I think, is that we're trying to study a ceiling. If we go anything lower, and we realize the impacts are minimal, and we could have done more, and you would have wanted more, now we have to go back and do the environmental review all over again. So we set the ceiling a little higher.
Okay. But so in that spirit, one of the things that I think that a good point was made as in terms of including city-owned parking lots. If we're including some in the spirit of doing this exercise thoroughly and completely, we should not exclude any city parking lots.
Well, if I may, the other parking lots actually have zoning already applied to them. The reason why we're including that here is that there is no zoning. It's special recreation. Nothing can be developed on it right now. So we're looking to go in from 0 to 50, 100, whatever that may be. The other lots already have zoning applied to it, including the downtown parking lots, things of that nature.
But again, in being methodical, one of the concerns I have is, and I do share, I've heard the same thing that Councilmember Najarian has heard, that there are some, I had individuals from the church approach me and say, what's happening? I mean, it was out of the blue. I had no clue. I said, what are you even talking about? Because I was not even aware this item was necessarily coming before us. This was months ago, saying that, hey, you guys aren't going to do anything to that lot. We rely on this parking, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying this to say that I'm against studying what can go into different lots and what the impact of it will be, but I do want to emphasize that I am not for having certain impacts without really us thinking through every step of it. For instance, perhaps the lot next to the church may be a viable location for some sort of small or reasonable development, but the lot just north of there, adjacent to the Civic Auditorium, as far as I know, that is one of our staging areas for emergency mobilization. If there's any major fires or anything else, and we start putting people into the Civic Auditorium, we bring our cots out. That flat area, which as unseemly as it may be, and is only used by motorcyclists and Christmas tree vendors, is an important area for staging city equipment in the event of an emergency in a very critical part of the city. We ought to consider those things as well. Again, I'm fine with perhaps studying it and seeing what can go in there, but I would not be supportive of developments there. If anything, I would be more supportive of a green space that was proposed long before, even though that area is open and green space rich compared to other parts of our city. In terms of the exercise, that's fine. I think that let's study every available space just so we are better informed. And, when the time comes for us to have a more serious discussion, we can have more concrete answers as to why we oppose certain types of developments or certain developments in general.
For the city lots, what you're proposing here doesn't just make it for residential, right? Because we're not blocking us into residential?
Mayor, council members, it has to be. Per the Surplus Land Act, we have to put residential here. It can have some elements of mixed use. We could obviously have commercial uses at the ground floor, but it has to be residential.
Okay. But what you're proposing is mixed use or
We
residential?
ultimately could have some sort of commercial uses at the bottom. We're not really quite at that level right now of
Okay.
that kind of detail, but if council chose to pursue that, we could then look at that very similar to your discussion on kind of neighborhood commercial uses.
All right. So I do agree with Councilmember Garpetian on, and Councilmember Brotman on some of the gentle, is that what you're calling it?
Gentle density.
Gentle density, we're learning new terms. I'm okay with all of this, in addition to Councilmember Kasakian's addition of that stretch for the Central and Chevy Chase. What I would ask from staff is, provided that next time around, when this comes, is our opportunity to really dive deep and have feedback, that this item is not presented to council on a Thursday, and then have it be brought forth for a vote on a Tuesday. I would hope that my council colleagues agree that at that point is where we are making the official decisions. And I, for one, would like time and opportunity to really assess what we're agreeing to or not agreeing to move forward with. So,
We'll set up briefings. Oh.
I was going to say, just the same way that we did this. Same way that we did this time, Mayor Satrian, we will schedule briefings, one-on-ones, well ahead of it, a couple weeks out, so.
okay, all right. All right,
I have a
well, go ahead.
So the parking lots that you have on Verdugo, it's not only the one south of the church and the one next to Civic Auditorium, right? It's the entire stretch.
We did include them all, but honestly, there are some there that are irregular, odd shape that we probably would not see development. We've included them for the sake of the study, just to make it easier to study, but there are some irregular size shapes that are lots we probably wouldn't see development.
And there lies the problem, because the ones north of Civic Auditorium, they are heavily being used by people who come to the park on the weekends or on daily basis. The college students park over there as well. The one south of the church, yes, maybe it's not used as much, but the rest of them are heavily used. And the other question that I have, let's say we don't have this plan here in front of us today, and we want to know what we can do on that parking lot, one of them, south of the church or north of the church, what have you. What is the process? If you have one lot, city has one lot, wants to develop it, either for, to lease it, to help our revenues or what have you. What is the process for that?
First, we have to have a public hearing to declare the property as surplus land. Being that property is more than, I believe it's a half acre, or it's a full acre, we have to go through a public process, an RFP. We can do a programmatic RFP. What we would do is we would come to city council in a closed session. We would ask for your input, your thoughts, your priorities. For the sake of argument, let's say replacing the parking, right? We don't want to lose those parking spaces. You would say that would be one of the items that you would expect any proposer to bring forth. We would come up with those priorities. We would then release for an RFP and evaluate that process. Mind you, this is all after we've done this study, the plan, the zoning, everything else that goes into it. At that point, if you're in a ground lease, you'd have to negotiate the terms after selecting a proposer who have won. That again would, with council, making sure that they met your priorities, those that you requested, and then just the general terms of the lease itself.
Right. If this property is not part of, if this parking lots are not part of this plan today, let's say we don't even have a plan today and we're working only on that parking lot, we can still do that, right? You can still develop it. You can do Surplus Land Act, you put an RFP out and you get proposals, you get comments, what kind of a project, retail in the bottom and residential on top. It doesn't have to be part of this entire plan in order for the city to develop it in the future.
You have to put part of the zoning.
You don't have zoning. You would have to rezone. You'd have to go through an entire public process there.
Land use
And
designation.
that
You
purpose,
have to do it
and
for-
that is what would be embedded in here. But it would not be as easy as just saying, we now want to use this property and put it out in RFP, because there is no zoning. Those things are not eligible to be built on there. And we actually don't have those powers to go from special recreation to, say, a 5-story apartment building. We would have to go through this process first to get that zoning in place to be able to do that. Much like a park, right? We wouldn't be able to go and just plop a building down in the middle of a park. This is very similar. Actually, you could treat that as the same zoning. It is the same zoning.
All right.
Okay.
All right, do we have a motion? We have all your notes?
I'll move the item.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call?
Councilmember Brotman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
No.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
No.
and Mayor Asadarian.
Yes. All right, what's next? Thank you, Mr. Calvert.
Next item is number 4, Management Services regarding selection of Hollywood Burbank Airport Citizen Advisory Committee members. A motion appointing 3 individuals to represent the city of Glendale on the Hollywood Burbank Airport Citizen Advisory Committee.
Mr. Galani?
Yes, Mayor Asadrian, member City Council, on July 16th, council decided to have an open application process to choose 3 members for the Hollywood Burbank Airport Citizen Advisory Committee to consider airplane noise and assist in updating the noise exposure map and noise compatibility program. Staff outreach included emails, direct emails, press releases, posting on social media and traditional media that culminated in 15 applications that we had received. At that meeting, council also directed the city manager to recommend, when we come back with the report, to recommend 3 applicants. The list of the 15, at least the names, are included in the staff report. And the 3 that I am recommending are Aurora Arbacia, Adrian Fieda, and Carl Pavlidis. I'd be happy to read a short version of their experience and background. And the airport authority will appoint these members at their August 19th meeting. And they'll be held quarterly in terms lasting for 18 months. Be happy to answer any
All right.
questions, sir.
Okay, do any of my colleagues have any questions?
Oh.
Go ahead.
No questions. I just was going to say, I think you selected the 3 best people for this. So I support the proposal.
All right, Councilmember Najarian?
Yes, on your number 1, Ms. Abracia, is she in any way connected with the city of Los Angeles currently? And the reason I ask is there is litigation, past litigation, current litigation. LAWA is in some respects a competitor with Hollywood Burbank Airport. I wouldn't want to put that commissioner in a conflict situation.
Understood, Councilmember Najarian. According to her application, Ms. Abracia has retired from the city of Los Angeles, so no wonder works for them.
Okay, anybody else?
Just a,
Councilmember Garpetian?
you know what, in the interest of time, no, I support your decision. We asked you to pick the nominees, and you did a great job. Thank you.
Councilmember Kasakian?
I'm fine with the staff recommendations.
A roll call?
I'll move the item.
Oh, sorry.
I'll move the item.
All right, roll call?
Councilmember Brotman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Asadarian.
Yes. What's next?
Adjournment?
Do I have a motion to
Motion
adjourn?
to adjourn.
All right, we are adjourned at 3:07 PM. Rolling into regular, right?
Right. Start off with the roll call.
Oh, we're on?
Yeah, we're
All right, welcome to the August 13th regular meeting of the City Council, called to order at 3:08 PM. May we have roll call?
Councilmember Brotman,
Here.
Garpetian,
Here.
Kasakian,
Here.
Najarian,
Here.
Mayor Asadrian.
Here. And may we have your report?
1A conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation initiation, a litigation pursuant to paragraph 4 of subdivision D of Government Code Section 54956.9, 2 potential cases. B, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation claim of State Farm Insurance Company, Ruse claim number 240209. C, public employment attorneys. D, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Najarian versus the City of Glendale, LASC, case number 24STCP02101. E, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to paragraph 2 of subdivision D of Government Code Section 54956.9, 1 potential case. F, conference with real property negotiators. C, designated negotiators Bradley Calvert, property location 116-118 California Street. Negotiating parties, Aro Arakhanian. Instructions to the negotiators will concern the price and terms of the payment for the lease of city-owned property.
All right.
Madam Mayor, we anticipate reporting item 1B.
Okay, we'll recess to closed session.
And as we're recessing for this, there was a noticing for a special housing authority, and I understand a meeting that is not being considered
That
today.
meeting is being canceled.
So for anyone who was following it. All right, thank you.